Chapter 5. Hackers Test 1 to 5.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a student center employee.
Hello. I'm here to speak with the person in charge of the, volunteer programs for students.
Yes, that's me. I'm Bob Hill.
I'm Lena Jones, and, I'm a music student. I'm looking for volunteer opportunities related to music. You see, the music department awards students, extra credit for volunteering if it has to do with music. And I thought that this center might have a few ideas.
Okay. Did you have anything particular in mind?
Well, I was thinking I could give, piano lessons or something.
Let's see. Would you be interested in teaching children? Clearview Community Center is expanding its after-school program for middle school students, and it needs more instructors.
That sounds perfect. Could you give me more details?
Well, the main thing is you'd have to be able to commit to being there from, 3:30 to 5 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Oh, did you say Tuesdays and Thursdays? That might be tricky.
What's the problem?
It's not ideal since I've got a class on Thursdays that runs from 4 to 6 p.m. I'm totally free on Tuesdays, though.
I'm afraid instructors need to be available on both days. Maybe you should put it off until next semester then.
I was hoping to get this extra credit as soon as possible. Right now, my course load is pretty manageable, but next semester, it's hard to say. I'll be in my 4th year, and my classes will probably be more demanding. I'm not sure if I will have the time and, energy for volunteering. And won't they have found a piano instructor by then anyway?
You never know. They've had trouble getting qualified instructors. I mean, a lot of people have expressed interest in teaching music, but very few of them have the skills required for the job.
I don't know. I was really hoping to volunteer this semester.
Well, there may be another opportunity that might interest you. Fairfield General Hospital is trying to organize some, music performances for charity. The goal is to raise money for the Children's Care Center.
That could be really interesting.
Also, I think the schedule is pretty flexible at this point. They haven't decided when to hold the performances, so you may be able to ask them to work around your classes.
All right, I think I will ask them. How can I apply?
You can just call and request to speak to the hospital's fundraising director. Let me see. Her name is, Molly Hines. She'll want to interview you first, and she'll probably ask you for a few work references. She'll want to hear you play as well. You should prepare some pieces of music to perform for her.
Okay, I'll do that.
Before you go, you may also want to let the other students in your program know about these opportunities, both at the community center and the, hospital.
I'm actually meeting my study group later today. At least a handful of them would be interested. I mean, if practicing for our upcoming concert isn't taking up too much of their time. In any case, I'll let them know.
Excellent. And I hope things go well with your application.
I do too. Thanks again for your help.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer.
Listen to a talk on the circadian rhythm. I'd like to start off by asking if you've ever gone on a long trip, perhaps to some place several time zones away, or if you've ever held a job on the graveyard shift. Well, the reason I ask has to do with my lecture today on the circadian rhythm. The human circadian rhythm is based on a 24-hour cycle, and any interruption to this rhythm, such as the ones I just mentioned, would have an impact on the body. A person could have sleep problems or become depressed and anxious. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's take a closer look at just what the circadian rhythm is. Essentially, what this rhythm does is it helps stabilize the timing of our bodily functions. The sleep cycle, body temperature, blood pressure, brainwave activity, hormone and digestive secretions, all of these operate according to a 24-hour cycle. So, as long as this rhythm stays on cue, an individual will generally experience physical and mental well-being. But what happens when the rhythm goes out of sync? And how does it go out of sync? Well, let me deal with the second question first. Okay, there are two aspects that control the circadian rhythm. One is internal. The body has a circadian pacemaker, or what many people call a biological clock. It's a section of the brain known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. Now, the SCN adjusts itself to the 24-hour light-dark cycle. So, if the SCN is dependent on the intervals of daytime and nighttime, what would happen if a person were blind? Well, the SCN would get confused, so to speak. A blind person may have a couple of nights when he sleeps well, and then a couple of nights when he doesn't. What this tells us is the SCN cannot, on its own, establish a normal circadian rhythm. A second aspect is needed to help the circadian rhythm function properly. This involves the external cues the SCN needs to make the necessary adjustments. So what are these external cues? Well, they're environmental cues, specifically light. Temperature also plays a role, but it doesn't have the same impact that light does. The circadian rhythm resets itself to the 24-hour day as it is exposed to either sunlight or darkness. The morning sun will cue the body to produce certain hormones and neurotransmitters that increase blood pressure and body temperature. It's these little changes that'll get the body going for daytime activities. At sunset, however, the body begins to produce melatonin and the blood pressure goes down. And as the evening hours wear on, the body continues to wind down. It is, in effect, preparing for nighttime sleep. So, how is this cycle broken? Well, actually, very easily. A long-distance trip, a nighttime job, putting off your bedtime for hours because you have an important exam. This brings me back to the first question. What happens when the cycle goes out of sync? Well, if you continue to subject your body to a routine that goes against your body clock, it will simply go out of balance. It will begin to produce chemicals and hormones in the wrong quantities and at the wrong time. Your mood and sleep problems will get worse. Those who work on the night shift are prone to physical and mental abnormalities. Our world today depends on round-the-clock workers, especially in the fields of medicine, agriculture, transportation, heavy manufacturing, and the service industries. This translates to millions of people with circadian rhythm-related health problems. So, medical people have come to see the importance of the circadian rhythm where health is concerned. Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer.
(12 to 17).
Listen to part of a lecture in an architecture class.
Today I'll be discussing a phenomenon that grew out of the need to conserve energy. In the past few decades, quite a number of airtight buildings were constructed. Actually, they continue to be constructed. What we'll be looking at is how these buildings make people sick. Yes, that's the phenomenon. These buildings make people sick. You may have heard of the ailment, sick building syndrome, or SBS for short. Seems like an apt name. Well, initial studies on airtight buildings showed that building owners could save substantially on heating and cooling energy costs, as much as 37%. Now, that's a lot of money. So naturally, more than a few showed interest in having this type of building constructed. By the 1970s, it became a requirement in some states for buildings to be airtight. This was the government's bid to conserve fuel. So, people in the construction field began devising ways to make these structures more airtight. I'll talk about just two approaches. One involves wrapping the building, the sealed polythene approach. Basically, sealed polythene is inserted between the insulating materials and the interior finish materials. But that's not all. On the outside, building paper or house wrap is used to form a moisture barrier. Now, I guess not many of you have ever seen building paper. It's a very heavy and durable paper that has been coated or laminated to make it resistant to water. It's very good at insulating, so you can see how it would make a building airtight. A second approach is the airtight drywall method, which necessitates the laying of gypsum boards against the foundation, roof, and walls of a building. Gypsum is actually a common mineral that is used to make cement and plaster. So, building owners began to enjoy energy savings. The government was able to reduce fuel consumption. But in the 1970s, doctors saw a sharp increase in the number of people with headaches, respiratory problems, dizziness, fatigue, eye irritations, nausea. It took a while, in fact several years, to trace these symptoms to their source. The doctors discovered that people who lived or worked in certain buildings became sick.
But when they left these buildings, their symptoms disappeared.
This is why it took so long to figure out what was going on. Well, medical researchers ascertained that the problem with these buildings was the flow of air, or rather, the lack of it. You see, when you seal a building or change its airflow, air may not move as freely. Contaminants are found in any building, you know. The paint on the walls, wooden decorations coated with varnish, poisonous emissions from photocopiers and computers, damp walls and floors that may have molds and fungi, and even perfume. I could go on and on. You see, when temperatures rise to about 20 degrees Celsius, volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, are emitted as vapors and gases from both solids and liquids that may be present in a room. And these vapors and gases are toxic and hazardous to health. Well, think of these gases in an airtight building, and you'll understand why people were getting sick. The most common symptoms that people experience are respiratory. A runny nose and a chronic cough are the milder symptoms. The worst is real respiratory distress, and for asthma sufferers, full-blown asthma fits. So, it's not surprising that with the construction of so many airtight buildings, more and more people began taking sick leaves. The World Health Organization has estimated that the loss due to absenteeism from sick building ailments
Amounts to about $100 billion a year.
So sure, the government was looking to save energy, but I guess these folks didn't realize that those savings would be wiped out by employee absenteeism, medical costs, reduced productivity.